This digital essay is about the comparison and contrast migration experience of the Afro-Cubans and the Chinese indentured servants from 1847 to 1874. There are similarities and differences of the two, but the point to raise is that coolies replaced blacks as the new slaves in Cuba. The term coolie is another word for Asian indentured servant signed by an 8-year contract. They were introduced in 1847 as the new source of labor needed because of Great Britain's actions of stopping the Atlantic slave trade in 1845. This had caused a shortage of labor in the fields of Spanish countries such as Cuba. Not only did the ceasing of the Atlantic slave trade prevent new slaves from coming in, but the fields were male-dominated with very few females, so the chances of reproduction were small. A new source of labor was needed, and Chinese suited it after a trial and error of different immigrant groups and the belief that Asians were proficient farmers. The minor similarities between the two ethnic groups are of physical punishments endured, such as whipping, and the trade routes in which they were chained and traveled for weeks by ship overseas. Minor differences are the concepts themselves, slaves and coolies. Indentured servants were not slaves, and supposedly should have had rights. Regardless, the social opinion was both ethnic groups were slaves in a social sense. There was a major difference in liberation status. Afro-Cubans could be free by purchasing a freedom paper, and then either forming or joining political groups to aid other Afro-Cubans. This went on gradually. During the time, Chinese indentured servants could not be free from their contracts with a freedom paper. At the end of their term, at the end of 8 years, they were asked to re-sign their contracts for another 8. And if refusal occurred, harsh, brutal punishments such as imprisonment or either drowning could occur until the indentured servants decided to sign their contracts again. The Chinese indentured servants could not escape. Without the freedom paper, they were forced back into labor. In conclusion, as more Afro-Cubans became free, the idea of slavery was still rooted deeply in many landowners, and it was continued in a social form through illegal methods with another ethnic group. The Chinese replaced the Afro-Cubans as the new slaves in Cuba.